Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me in another video. So today we're going to be doing something that I think is very on brand for me. Maybe it's also a little bit niche. And I thought it would just be a really fun video to make because I was thinking about what would a Celine gift guide look like, because there's right now a few different eras that we're kind of seeing happen at the brand. I thought it would be fun to break it down in terms of 3 types of eras at Celine, and I think also 3 very different customers of the brand: the Phoebe client, the Hedi client, and now the emerging Michael Ryder era. Everything on this list is under $1,000, which pretty much means no bags unless we go pre-loved. I also did a more personal gift list on my Substack, but today I really just wanted to be very Celine core, so let's just get started. And we'll first start off with the Phoebe Philo era. And while Hedi pretty much stripped most of her era away, there are still some pieces that have the Phoebe DNA, but realistically, there's not a lot in this section that you can get at Celine under the $1,000 price point. I do think Michael Ryder is slowly introducing, or at least like embracing and revamping, some of that heritage again at the brand. One thing that we can still find today at Celine is the Celine Knot line jewelry. It is costume jewelry, luxury costume jewelry. It's always very expensive for what it is, so I'm just gonna like say that in the beginning, but this is again something that is still very Phoebe coded. And these pieces, they start at 445 USD for the ring, and then there's also earrings, bangles, there's the sparkling finish, which feels quite an Hedi interpretation. Phoebe has started her own brand. We're gonna focus a lot more on that. So the Phoebe Philo Peak sunglasses are very old Celine, but also an evolution for her own brand. They're very dramatic but wearable, I think, for a lot of different face shapes. Less extreme than the Bombay. That is a very like statement, bold style, and I think the Peak sunglasses are as well. I think it's not as extreme, and these go for $460. There's just something about them that when you put them on, you just kind of have that Phoebe Philo attitude. And you don't necessarily have to be in full Phoebe Philo, but I feel like when you put those on, it just makes your outfit look Phoebe Philo. Next, I want to talk about the Phoebe Philo gig pouch. This is a clutch version of the gig bag, and I think it's also like a nice pouch, a nice catch-all, a nice clutch option. You can wear as grab and go if you need your larger totes or your larger bags, or if I think about how someone like Carolyn Bessette Kennedy had her Comme des Garçons pouch like this, or even Phoebe during this old Celine era would wear the trio bag. This is very Phoebe Philo coded. I think it's very versatile. It would be a great gift option. Next, we've got the beaded hoop earrings. These are in sterling silver. I think everyday appropriate. They go for $480 US. I also included this one on my Substack. I think they're just a nice everyday piece, just a little bit of a different twist on your typical hoop earrings. Now, I also want to mention this for those that are on her email list. You've subscribed to the brand, you've probably already received the invite to the private sale. You probably don't need me to tell you this, but there were a few pieces that were under the 1K price point. This Phoebe Philo bucket hat. Now, I know bucket hats aren't for everybody. Well, some bucket hats don't appeal to me. I actually think this looks quite elegant. It feels more like a modern take on like a cloche kind of hat. It feels more modern in the leather, but also very Phoebe Philo. Next, there's this twisted scarf, which is quite unusual, but I think it's that balance of something that is strange, sculptural, and abstract. Notice that Phoebe really does like to cover the neck. So let's say you have like a satin silk blouse already, or even just like a t-shirt. This is just an unexpected detail on a very simple, casual outfit, or a way to add something a little bit more abstract to a even like very formal outfit. And I also think it's worthwhile mentioning pre-loved Phoebe Celine. The stigma around pre-loved things, I think in my mind has gone. I know a lot of people still really like ultra new, ultra pristine, but I think for the Phoebe Philo woman, she's definitely someone who does not mind something pre-loved. When it came to a few different bag options, I wanted to highlight this old Celine classic bag in Python. So this is not embossed, it's actual Python. It's going for $700 US. If Celine released this bag today, it would be probably $5,000. I also saw that there was this pony hair old Celine classic bag, and it's going for $825. Something a little bit different. What these bags are going for are basically Coach bags are going for now, but you're getting something Celine, you're getting something exotic or made with pony hair, a little bit unusual. Another pre-loved gem I saw on Risi, which is this amazing pre-loved boutique in Paris that has an incredible selection of Phoebe Philo era Celine. This is this leopard pony hair fur cuff, very Phoebe coated. It also feels very like Merit Oppenheim to me. You know, I think it's, again, one of these kind of like abstract accessories that can take a very simple or very classic look and just make it feel a little bit unusual and strange, but like also in a chic way. Now, I also want to include things that I think would be interesting lifestyle pieces or lifestyle gifts. I think there are a lot of artists that you could reference. I was thinking Peter Doig most recently. I think that Phoebe Philo has expressed an interest in like a lot of different artists, but what is very iconic to me, one of Phoebe's most iconic collections, the Spring Summer 2017, I always think of Yves Klein, and I just think it would be great to get like an Yves Klein like coffee table or art book. You can find these at a multitude of different bookstores. It could be Yves Klein, it could be Peter Doig, it could be a multitude of different artists, but something like this would be a cool semi-related item. And then finally, I think a great gift that's always going to be at the top of any gift guide list I have, an art gallery, a museum membership. I think it's a way to embrace culture, to support culture financially. There are different like tiers of museum membership, whether it's at an individual, a family, a couple's level. But yeah, getting something for like you and then getting a dual membership, I think it's a great thing to consider. Now let's move over to Hedi's world, because there are a lot of options actually currently still at Celine. I don't just want to repeat what is on the Celine website gift selection, so I thought I'd just pick pieces that I think are very specifically like Hedi coded, Hedi boy adjacent, if you will, as well as some other lifestyle products that I think would be of interest. One of my favorite dinner night candles, even just if I want to light up a nice candle, I've bought multiple of these, and I'm talking about the Celine night clubbing candle. The name is kind of misleading. It smells unexpectedly so beautiful, so elegant. Whenever we have people over, it actually always gets compliments. It's $110. It's a way to kind of get a piece of the brand. Also, these kinds of like decahedron shapes. You can definitely repurpose, put your beauty, your makeup brushes, your pencils, little trinkets, whatever. They can always be like repurposed as other homeware pieces. Another item that is always on my gift guide, so long as they have them, are these little Celine fragrance sets. If you're someone who loves the Hedi era of Celine, you've probably in some capacity have already probably tried black tie or parade or night clubbing, but I think that this set, it's a really fun expansion. The miniatures are really adorable, great for travel. What I love about fragrances is they're also an experience and they also create memories. Again, this collection, it was very deeply personal to Hedi. I think there's something very special about this. Another very Hedi coded Celine item you can still get, it's the Celine Slim black tie. I think this is, again, a signature. Not everyone is necessarily going to buy the ready to wear, but a black tie, I think it's just a nice way to feel elevated. You could just be wearing any white shirt. You could be wearing jeans and a leather jacket, but putting on this tie, it's one of those signature attitude pieces. I think if you have this, you'll have it forever kind of thing. Another item I wanted to mention was this Triomphe belt in python. It's very indulgent. It's python, so it's exotic. The logo does blend into it, so it feels maybe a little bit subtle, but you can still see it. However, if you don't necessarily want the loud logo, there's also the Western python styles too. I think this is not something that most people would buy for themselves, but if they were to receive this as a gift, it would be very, very special, because it is kind of an indulgence to have an exotic belt, but also very Hedi Slimane. Like if you look at his personal style, he's often wearing these kinds of exotic belts. So when it comes to sunglasses, I really think you could probably take your pick your favorite. I think there's an assortment of different styles that are very Hedi coded. I really love like the metal frame ones, and I really love the Triomphe oval ones. I really wear those, but I think for something that feels a little bit unusual, feels a little bit strange, this wouldn't be for everyone. I think a certain kind of person would need to pull this off, but I really love the Triomphe oval sunglasses in the white. It feels very much his time at Saint Laurent. It also feels very 90s. It also feels like it could be also Audrey Hepburn in a way, but also very Eddie. Again, it's because there's something about the white that feels striking to me. Again, I have the black, but if I were to pick up another Eddie era pair of sunglasses, it would be these. Now, kind of just getting away from Celine, because again, I could just list off all of my favorite things and it would just be really predictable, but I thought the Eddie customer who likes Celine, there are other, I think, niche things that they might appreciate. And I think when it comes to gift giving, it's always fun to do something that is a little bit more whimsical. There's something about these Edie Parker croc lighter cases that just feel more of like a whimsical approach to the style. Something about the fact that it's a reptile, the fact that it's a lighter case. I like the gold, I like the silver, whatever one's preference is, but I just think this is such a fun little piece. Another thing that I think would be really cool to like gift is, I often think of band tees as very indie rock and roll kind of thing, and I was really thinking about the t-shirts that Charlie XCX will wear, these like Lou Reed band tees that are a little bit more obscure, not like the obvious ones, but like there's something about these more niche Lou Reed ones that look like really worn in. I think if you can find one that's like very vintage, very worn in, there's just something so Eddie to me about that. I was just browsing homeware sites and I came across this Stingray ashtray in this Art Deco style. There's something about like an exotic ashtray that feels next level. It also feels very Mary Kay coated to me. This is a vintage item, but yeah, I think an exotic ashtray like totally has that energy. And then when it came to books, I was thinking for Eddie's literary universe, something very specific. This Rimbaud book of poems, it's perfectly into that. And I was thinking as an experience for Phoebe Philo, I would think like an art gallery. And I think like an art gallery, a museum membership would be across the board for all of these designers. But I think more specifically Eddie, I could see this person just like loving concert tickets. Most people would too. It doesn't have to be necessarily like bands that are very Eddie coded. Like it could be like Iggy Pop or something more indie like The Help, but yeah, I just think getting like tickets to someone's like favorite band is always a fun experience. And then finally with Michael Ryder, so this is the newest era. So far, we've only seen 2 collections, so we haven't really had a whole full experience, but I think that's also exciting because we're like seeing this new era unfold. But to me, Michael Ryder's era is very elegant, but it's also, I think, very whimsical. So in my mind, it's like this whimsy chic. I also think his era feels quite intellectual, preppy, playful, and there's also this lean towards something that feels like old academia to me. When it came to my list of products, the first item that I think is something that I think is just in general, if you're like a Celine lover from the previous eras, I think this is one to consider, and it's the Celine Smile pouch. It's not technically a bag, it's a pouch, but I think you could wear it in a clutch kind of way. I think it captures this new energy. I think the blue is amazing. I think you could also do the black or that kind of citrus color. I think it's kind of like a nice transitional piece if you're not 100% sure, if you want to like test out the leather, see how it feels. I think this is definitely one of those pieces to consider. So charms are having a major moment right now, and I think it's a sweet gift and it's very this new era at Celine. I also think with what we saw on the runway, there are multiple ways you can style it very creatively. You can just attach a charm to really anything. You could just wear it on a bracelet, you could also wear it on a bag, or it could be like the whole left side of a jacket. I think the Arc de Triomphe charm is very emblematic of Celine. I'm very curious. We have yet to see like the elephant, the hand. I think the key is also a great option as well. Again, that like jacket with the locks and the keys. I think this is like a nice little gift. Next, I want to highlight the notebook cover. Of course, for the second collection, we saw this as like a heavy theme. A lot of the models were carrying these notebooks, kind of professor, scholarly kind of way. Along with that, there's also Celine offers these pencil cases, kind of unexpected. This is not something that people would typically buy for themselves, but for like the academic person or someone that really likes journaling or writing poetry, this would be a sweet gift. Considering I mentioned the skinny tie earlier, I thought what was a fun, quirky take from Michael Ryder was this chopped tie. Also very signature in this red and blue of the new Michael Ryder palette. It's very whimsical. This may not necessarily be for everybody, but I think for someone that is a little bit more adventurous in their style that really likes this new era, this is a fun little piece. Another emphasis with this new era were these scarves, and we're seeing this lavalier scarf that they're emphasizing. Again, it's very classic French, very elegant. I liked with this classic Triomphe bag, they've embedded it. There's this scarf detail on it. If I'm gonna be honest, Celine is not really the first place I'd look for a silk scarf. I think if you can find a color or pattern you like or would like to gift to somebody, it's definitely something to consider. I think there is sort of like a color scheme that Michael Ryder is going for. It's this very primary red, royal blue, like kind of these colors of like the French flag of like nobility. There is this sort of like neoclassicism with a scarf like this. Next, I wanted to mention this new card holder with this Triomphe canvas and the stripes. Personally, this isn't something I would go for myself, but I do appreciate the experimentation. It's one of the more like accessible items. It's going for $390 USD. The bifold, it's $590. And then what I've noticed is new is the Celine hand cream. It's in a few different scents: Parade, Le Peau Nu, Reptile, Cologne Celeste. Kind of a simple design, but I do like that the cap is that Celine coated decahedron design. A nice, small, unexpected type of gift. And then when it came to books, I was really thinking what would be a book to recommend. Now, I was watching an interview with Michael Ryder. In the background, you could see there's this Joan Didion poster, and of course, I think that is very old Celine. Of course, there's that famous campaign. So I think getting like a Joan Didion completed works collection would be a very Michael Ryder, but also very Celine gift. And then finally, if the Phoebe consumer is getting the museum membership, if the Hedi customer is getting the concert tickets, I could see perhaps that customer wanting either of those, but I think the Michael Ryder Celine person is going to get a magazine subscription, something that is analog, tactile, intellectual, and it would be of like that person's interest. There's still a lot of magazines that focus on like specific interests, be it design, home decor, travel, photography, cooking, whatever fits that person's interest. A magazine subscription in today's day and age feels even more unique because it's not something that people buy into a whole lot, but again, there's something about that tactile experience that I think feels special. So I'm just going to edit this in and add it as a bonus. I was thinking about the Michael Kors era, and while the Y2K era of Celine, it's been a while, I do think there are some current items if perhaps you like that style or maybe have somebody that is closer to that style. Like personally, this is probably the era I feel least of a connection with. Actually, just browsing on the RealReal, they have like this Black Friday sale going on, and I was looking at Celine. The more I was kind of just browsing, the more I realized we could do a whole section on this. When I think of Michael Kors, it's more of that kind of jet set, very glamorous style. Someone who is perpetually on vacation. Think of like Gisele Bündchen in the 2000s. Her style, luxe knitwear, animal print, camel coats, and slouchy stilettos. Of the current Celine era, there really isn't a whole lot of this look at the brand at all, even under the 1K price point. However, I do think the Ava style is probably the closest thing to that like Michael Kors Y2K era that you can still get at the brand. Of course, if you're going new, it's not under this 1K price point. However, you can go pre-loved, or you can just go to like that Y2K era. There's something about even just this Triomphe denim that is very Michael Kors Y2K era. Other bags from this era that I also want to highlight are the Pullbot, the Boogie, and those bags, all bags you can find secondhand, really great deals under $1,000. There are a lot of like very Y2K styles that I think fit into this sort of bracket. Like, so if you have somebody that likes the Y2K aesthetic, I'd even put them in this category. Caleb Snell is a YouTuber who really, I think, brought back the attention of this style to many handbag lovers recently. Again, it does have that like east-west silhouette that we're seeing on a lot of bags right now. Even Celine for the spring 2026 collection had this style that kind of reminded me of the Boogie, not totally, but just sort of that general rectangular shape with the top handle. Now this had like a rounded flap with the Triomphe, so not 100% the same. Again, these are all styles that you can find for really great prices secondhand. And this is probably the era that is best priced if you want to buy secondhand. If I think about ready to wear, I know ready to wear is very specific, but I just saw these on the RealReal, and this is actually what made me want to add this into this video. There were these straight leg pants with this gold chain print, and Hedi actually brought this style, like this print back for one of the collections. I could also see it fitting into the Michael Ryder era as well. This gold chain print, also very heritage to Celine Vipiana. Emily Ratajkowski wore these pants some time ago. It's very specific, but I just want to say this print in general when it comes to the ready to wear, even in like the silks department. Again, these things you can find for great deals. In terms of a lifestyle product that I think is very on brand for this era of Celine, typically you see these kind of travel sets. Like I think of something like the Sol de Janeiro jet set. That feels very Michael Kors Celine era. I could definitely see how someone that really just likes vacationing might like a set like this. In terms of book recommendations, Michael Kors actually had a book, Jet Set, A Life of Glamour. You can find these secondhand. There's not a whole lot of them floating around, but as an alternative, I think these destination coffee table books by Celine are a really great option, especially if someone has like a favorite destination they like to go to. For a lifestyle gift, I think someone of this era would definitely love a spa treatment. This person is very glamorous and she's really invested in going to the spa and her wellness. So I think that would be a nice experiential gift. So yeah, that's my Celine gift guide for the various Celine eras. I'm curious, is there like a certain era you fall into? Or if you're someone like me and you can maybe dabble in all three, please let me know down below. Thank you so much for joining me in another one, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!